All right, Jeanine, these are my favorite conversations because at some point you made a tremendous decision to invest your life savings into a business that you have little to no control over because that's franchising. But obviously then you take control of the outcome. So to start and build the foundation for a conversation, how did you accidentally fall into franchising? What's your franchise backstory?
Well, it really started with my husband, who was in finance while I produced television commercials on a freelance basis. So I was doing a lot of traveling to West Coast, foreign countries, and he was on the train back and forth to Manhattan. We both led very busy lives. He decided that the rat race was no longer for him, and his sister, being a doctor, told him, check out, healthcare landscape and in-home care and, baby boomers getting older. So he did. At the same time, he discovered that a really good friend of his had retired from the finance industry a couple of years prior, and he bought a Right at Home. So you put them together and it lands us where we are. Now, initially, the decision was that I would continue my career and he would head the business. But for everyone watching, that is impossible, to be married and have a business and not be involved. So for a few of the first years, I did both. I would simultaneously, cast characters for a commercial or a small project while sneaking to make phone calls and see how things were going and, contribute however I could. But I did notice that my passion started to shift. I loved my job. I loved the lights, camera, action and being, a part of that. But I have a backstory with my grandmother, and my passion has always been, even from a little girl, the elderly. Not, saving dogs, saving cats, and, the environment. Those are all wonderful issues, but my heart has always been with seniors. So I just noticed I naturally felt my heart was leading towards Right at Home. And, I always say the universe opens up the doors that are meant to be open and closes the ones that you need to leave behind. And the pandemic hit. Everyone worked remotely. Everything was shut down. I couldn't work. And it was just the perfect, coalesce of no business. I could dedicate 100% of myself to Right at Home. And when everything opened up again, I just said, I'm not going back. I'm going to give 100% of myself into my business.
What's been the outcome of you making that decision? And there's tons I want to unpack from your opening statement, but what's the outcome now?
It's tremendous, the impact. I'm happier. I contribute more. I think every occupation is worthwhile. And, people sometimes hear commercials that think it's glitz and glamour and entertainment, but no, that was meaningful work, but it doesn't compare to being able to help people, my clients, but caregivers too. I mean, there is a whole company in my territories of people that hire me and people that I hire, and I get to brighten their lives, hopefully, and employ them and touch them and help people. I mean, what's better than that?
I mean, I read people's faces. Like I enjoy watching faces when you talk about something, and the way you just lit up about it, like that's the magic. And again, I want to go back to a bunch of things that I want to unpack from your opening statement, but like I think through the beauty of senior care matched or aligned with people who have gone through it in some capacity, whether they took care of their aging parents or they took care of their aging grandparents, or they fell in love with some sort of component of compassion and empathy. And now obviously it can connect back to a business or career that when you or I are growing up, it's not like we're going to school saying, hey, we're going to be in senior care someday, because our lives haven't met really the understanding or the empathy and passion part. And so it's awesome to just watch your face light up about it, because it's like when we're little children, we're not given the tools to be able to dream to do this, but now you've been able to align you're your own boss with something that you care passionately about. and that brings you some sort of sense of completion in what you're able to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would say the reason why I do feel this way is because growing up, my parents were married, and 6 months later, my mother's father died, and her mother moved in, my grandmother, into this very modest house. Cut to, 70s, where it's myself and my two brothers. It was not easy having what was essentially a fourth child in the home. So 3 of us and my grandmother. So there was some strain on my mother's relationship with her mother. And I just jumped in. People say my middle name is I Can Do It. And that's kind of where it started, just to make sure everybody was okay. Like, I'll make her dinner. I'll make her fish sticks. She needs help. She needs company, or she's calling for my mother. No one, what do you need? What do you need? And she was my best friend. So my husband, and she stayed at home as long as she could, and she did have to go to a nursing home, and that wasn't the greatest, I think, for her, but I met other seniors there and her roommate, and we would all have lunch together when I would go at meal times. And after she passed, I still went there because these people needed company. And I was young. They love the young ones, and all, they fawn, and you listen to their stories. And it was just such a wonderful opportunity. Now, contrast that with my husband's grandmother, who did have a live-in aide and remained at home until she was 102. So, when I first heard about Right at Home from him, I just thought about, if we had that, if we had those caregivers in my house on DeVoe Avenue in Yonkers, how much longer I might have had my grandma. Not to say that, longevity is determined by, where you call home. But I just think the circumstances might have been a little different if we took the route that they took. So now I'm happy every time I take on a client or talk to the families. I think I'm bringing them harmony. I'm bringing them peace. I'm bringing them quality time rather, that they spend with their loved ones. It's not have to, it's not taking out the trash. It's not, did she take her medication? Is she taking her Ensure? Is he drinking? Is he brushing his teeth? They don't have to think about that. So they can maintain that relationship, as opposed to the labor of love. We do that. That's our job.
Yeah. Two comments and a follow-up question on that. It's interesting to think of the bookends of life, on how much we need when we're an infant and a child, and how much we need at the end. And I think sometimes people are ignored at the end, or perceive that they don't need help in this very delicate moment of life, which is the understand you're in the fourth quarter, and sometimes having people around you to be compassionate and empathetic has such a huge impact. And I think about the way that you're talking, like, obviously you talked well and smiled about your career in commercials, but you have probably a-hole clients that you're dealing with left and right. And so what is the purpose of doing that? And when you're trying to discover that, it's somewhat tough, but clearly you're finding you found purpose, and you're able to go back to your childhood and remember what it felt like to keep going to the nursing facility after your grandmother passed. And so it's interesting just to think about, like, bookends and how things start to make sense later in life. And then that you really can have a career that you're passionate about, that passion aligns. So my odd question is, because you talk about, like, the transition for you is pandemic. You can think through longevity of life through your husband's grandma versus yours. Does the delicacy of life thought go into your brain when you're making a decision that I'm going to go full force into Right at Home versus stay in my previous career?
Well, the delicacy of life. Yeah, life is delicate, because it's made up of humans, and we're sensitive creatures, and we have emotions. And I think loneliness, forgive me, is
Oh, you're good.
the worst, is the worst of them, whatever age. So I do remember being at the dining room table when we were signing the papers, the operating agreement. And for a moment I thought, what are we doing? But that was quickly overshadowed with, we're going to make people's lives better. And that's Right at Home's motto, improving the quality of life for those we serve. And it's so simple, but it's so true. And not that it doesn't come with its challenges, but if that's a choice, I'll take it.
Talked with many franchisees, and if I look at it very, very carefully, there's two things that pushes a franchisee over the edge to say, yes, I want to buy the business. The main things are, from a structural standpoint, it's the culture of the organization, or can I get super passionate about it? And it's obviously the makeup of the business. Like, can it actually cover my wealth desires? Mm. So I think about those things, and I think about like what pushes someone over the edge. And in your opening statement, you talked about your husband hitting this point in the rat race, and you ultimately hit this point in the rat race. Mm-hmm. Can you remember like either conversations that the two of you had that made you say like, I'm done with this, or like I'm not feeling like my job or career is giving me back what I'm giving it on my side, from your husband or you?
Absolutely. It's a completely different world when you work for somebody else, and you work really hard, but you're still not in control, even, at the highest level. And you reach a point where you want that control. You want to be, whether you sink or swim, at least you called the shots. So we had conversations, of course, what if this, what if it doesn't work out? What if that, but what if it does? That's us. We decide how to do it. We make up our business plan. We hire the people. So that's thrilling. So that's what really pushed me over the edge. I mean, I blood, sweat, and tears since I was 20 years old, trying to sell soda products and pens, and certainly I can start a small business, and it's great because there are people around, and his friend, of course, that had the business that we can lean on. It's not as though we're starting from scratch. It's a system, and they'll teach you. They want you to succeed. So you've got a big cheerleader. So that was, the idea of the franchise really nipped it in the bud for me. I said, that's a great idea. Let's do that. Let's start over.
So I know your brand very well because we've worked with Right at Home for a very long time. Mm-hmm. So this is almost leading the witness on the statement, but the word that struck me that you brought up, and I think it cross applies to franchise ownership or business ownership, is the word lonely. And so you happen to be at a brand that has tremendous culture and community, friendships that exist within it, the support that comes back to it. But I think for a franchise buyer, I've talked with plenty of, not with Right at Home, but plenty of franchisees who had to exit or business that didn't work. And if I had to really pick out a word, like what you just said connected with me, and I haven't thought of it this way, but what made a franchisee fail is really loneliness, because they ended up saying, I'm going to sign this big operating document, and franchisor goes, here you go, go and do this. And there was no support, and they're lost, and they're scared to ask for help, but the system isn't set up to do this. So like, I say this, like it's almost a blessing you guys fell into a brand like this, because there are plenty of brands where you're just thrown out into the ocean and said, go be a franchisee. But yeah. Does that connect with you? Like, do you feel like Right at Home also solves the loneliness factor for you as a business owner?
Yes. They have calls every week, tell you what's going on, their innovations. I have calls every month, sometimes more frequently, with my coach. And I do have I can do it. I'm not built to ask for help, but a couple of times I was on Zooms with her I'm like, where do I go to find something? And I'm like, but wait, but it just did this. She goes, if it takes you longer than 5 seconds, I'm going to do it and I'll email you, where to find it, how to do it. It shouldn't take you this long. I'm like, yeah, great. Thank you. Because you know that I'm busy and I don't have time to go down that rabbit hole. They have somebody for every part of this business. Whether it be, federal and state regulations, you call Doug, you call Nikki about labor policy, social media platforms, and the way that Facebook can now accept, I don't know, like Google My Business on Facebook. That's your social media expert, your online marketing. And then sales is somebody else. So there's always like somebody on speed dial with any question that if they don't pick up the phone right away, they'll call you back on your cell phone later. They're very responsive and there's no question that they can't answer. And if they can't answer it, they'll find the answer.
Yeah, I mean, I love that statement because I think about like ultimately there are plenty of people like you and your husband who hit this roadblock, whether corporate America says like this is the top of your opportunity. You're never going to be CEO. You're stuck in this position. You're going to be in this rat race for forever. And then they have this moment and they quit. But what happens in some franchise brands, not right at home, but the infrastructure is gone. Like in corporate America, you can look around, there's HR and there's supply chain management and marketing and operations. But in franchising, some franchisees are thrown out there and say, now you're in charge of all of this. And that's probably the toughest part that a franchise buyer has to go through. Do you think through like the moment, and the two sides to this question? Do you think through the moments that you went through with your grandma and being in the facility when you're interacting or leading your team that is going to go interact with the senior community now, and on another swing to it, how do you mentally deal with the fact that some seniors are going to pass away and you're building relationships? Like, how did you get mentally strong enough to be built for that?
I'm still not mentally strong enough for that, really. There's actually one client that I take out personally. There's something between us. He's 94 and he's blind, and he goes to the eye doctor and Walmart and the barber about 4 times a year. And I am the only one that can take him. And we went to the eye doctor the other day, and he has dry eye, but because of his macular degeneration, he can't feel it. So I said to the doctor, are we really going to put him on more drops when it doesn't bother him? And he said, Jeanine, if he gets an infection in that eye, that's what the dryness will do. If he gets an infection in that eye, it could be disastrous for him. And, it was that moment of, yeah, he's 92. And there will come a day, right? There will come that day. And you just have to tell yourself, and I tell the caregivers this as well, because they develop very strong relationships with clients, and oftentimes they become part of the family. You have to see your time now as your contribution and your opportunity to make their, as you said, fourth quarter the best it can be. Give them those memories, those feelings of support, of love to take with them to the next chapter.
See, what's amazing about that statement, obviously vulnerable and saying I'm still not comfortable with it, you wanting to have a tremendous impact on someone else's life and stepping in there and say, I'm bonded with them, finding purpose in what you do on a daily basis. Like, I mean, we're in the marketing business, so there's similarities to what you were in, and there's certainly some wonderful moments, the steak dinners, or us coming up with an idea that turns into an awesome commercial. But like a commercial has such an expiration date. Maybe we're trying to fight to win an Emmy or something, but then you got to go hustle and get the next one. Here, like the memories and the feelings mixed with a career, or like it's like undescribable, which would mean if you don't know what it's like to be a caregiver, or you don't know what it's like to have compassion or empathy for someone that's aging, maybe this business won't align with you. But if you do, like, how powerful is that? Like it feels so much larger than a career,
I think that's interesting. I wonder. I think there are probably people in the in-home care industry that maybe don't necessarily have the depth of, my story or my husband's story. And I'm sure they succeed. Why wouldn't they? If you work, you succeed. But what I was thinking of was the happiness factor. Like when I'm out there and I'm visiting and I'm doing, checks or supervisory, like that makes me feel great. I go to bed every night like, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to look at Henry and Sally and smile and give them a kiss and a hug. That's making a difference one person at a time. I know that sounds cliche. So my quality of life and my happiness are here and I'm successful. Thank you, God. So if you don't have that compassion, the empathy, that sensitivity part, maybe you have the wealth, but it's hollower, I think.
Well, I'm going to ask my question, but I'll show you that. That's my wonderful tattoo.
I love it. I love it.
But I think I think deeply about this. I think about a few things. As a human, I think about life being short. How do I maximize my time? How can I be selfish about what I'm doing for me and my family? Which obviously, me being a business owner, that we can have the same feeling there. And then what am I getting out of everything that I'm doing? And does that help me equal happiness? And when it doesn't, and I think about the shortness of life, then I have to really think through, like, is it worth it? Like, is this going to bring me happiness? I saw a quote, and it's like, it talks about a human being that they've passed, moved on in life, but it talks about all their accomplishments, and then it shared their obituary, which was like 3 sentences. It's like nobody remembers all this stuff that you're due and everything that you have to accomplish in your career. That's all that's left. But what remains are these fantastic memories and these moments. And then, like my statement, and you give me any feedback on this too, but
okay.
Like I think us as humans, like we're not as delicate as we need to be. That you have a client who is blind, who is end of their ride is coming, and like I obviously as a child, like I desire the love of my parents and I need that compassion and empathy. But it's almost like we're like, oh no, they've been through life, they have experience, and we discount that just how much they need. And I think like what you're doing there is going to build like it's not comfort that it's done, but there's comfort for him that he's got someone that cares about him. And that probably equals happiness at a greater scale that maybe he can't articulate. But it's, of course, there. It's like in the heart at this very crucial stage. And that's where, like, in the chase of or pursuit of happiness, if we're trying to align something that we can really feel good about and go to bed at night and feeling like we're making a difference in anybody's life, whether it's one person or it's a million people, like it makes that the chase for the dollar so much more valuable, you know?
Yeah. And I think it just comes. I mean, listen, there's no mission without margin. Not my words. I took it from somebody else. But what you were saying, the value of, like, I remember my first boyfriend, and, everyone remembers their first love. And I was so happy. I was happy because somebody really loved me. And different from parental and sibling love, but somebody not in my family loved me. And when I show love to my clients, even if it's not received, even if they're mad at me for something, I know that I contribute to their happiness. I'm not there all the time. I can't, and I'm not their caregiver. But my caregivers, between myself and them, we're making them happy with love.
Yeah.
And
well, the magic of that is like, if somewhere out there in the world or in your market is listening to this, like, I want to bet on you to take care of my parents, because that, like, having that, and that's part of the beauty of this business model, is it offsets the stress of an adult having to take care of their aging parent. You're solving that need. And it's almost like listening to you talk is who I want taking care of my parents when they need this, you know?
Thank you.
It's awesome. Well, no, I said none of these things are scripted. It's going to just go in a direction that goes. But I'm grateful of what you're sharing, because I think if on a franchise buyer standpoint, like, you got to align to something that you're going to feel good about. And yes, you can be a business owner in this category, and I'm sure do fine. Like, the category is set up for fine,
Right.
but it's also set up to grab on to something much larger, like a currency larger than money.
It's set up to shine.
Yeah.
Be fine, or you can shine.
Right. I love that. So, and this is such a simple question to end with, but when you think through like where you want to go with your life now, like you've now jumped into this, and again, like maybe chasing the awards on the commercial side is something that felt fulfilling, but now, like, do you think about scaling the business? Like, do you think about how do I impact more people? Like, what is winning for you now as you move on and continue on as a franchise owner?
Well, I own 5 territories, so I think the scaling has been completed. I think the goal is to help as many people as possible. But now I've changed a little bit. Sure, there's my service providing in-home care, but I just had a staff meeting earlier this week, and I reminded them the reason I insist on answering the phone, ending your greeting with, "How may I help you?" is because it's your privilege to have the opportunity to help someone, and you can always help them. Maybe it's not with our service. Maybe you can refer them to an elder care attorney. Maybe they don't know where to turn because 2 rehabs, they were disappointed in. Where else can they look? Maybe they need a geriatric care manager because everything is a mess, or they need a company to downsize because mom's moving. So you can, that's really where I'm at now. When that phone rings, and again, caregiver or client, they're equally important. How may I help you? It's my honor. It's my privilege. It may not always translate into business, but it feels just as good.
I actually think it does translate into business, because you keep on putting that out there into the aura. Like that's buying you like such goodwill of having that mentality, and not always saying what's in it for me in this moment, but maybe down the line it could turn into something. Like, I think that's just the right mentality in life,
It's giver's gain. If not to be so cliche all the time, but don't look at how much money is in your pocket, just keep giving, and you know what? It'll replenish itself. The more you give, the more you gain, in so many ways, not just financial.
Well, I already said I'm grateful for having this conversation. These are the kind of things that light up my day, and I really am truly grateful that you gave me some of your time. Thank you for sharing some of your story with me.
It was a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for having me. This has been great. It's a good beginning to my day. Thank you.
I love it. For Jeanine, I'm Nick. This is another episode of Meet the Z.